In studio as well, some technical problems, but let's now discuss our top story, the plunge in the rand after Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan was told that he had been summoned to court. Lesiba Motata is from Investment Solutions. Great to have you with us in studio, Lesiba. So this has been on the cards, rumbling in the background, but it still seems like the market was taken by surprise today.
It is, because if there was problems, they should have come earlier. The minister was let to go overseas. He held a decent defense for South Africa in New York, speaking to all the investors. As you can appreciate, there's the World Bank, IMF annual meeting that's happening there, where he really held it down for South Africa, defending our cause, defining what we're doing in terms of making sure that we don't get downgraded to sub-investment grade. Now, if you allow a leader to go out in that fashion and tell investors one thing and arrive with a very different outcome later, it just shows that there's a house with many voices.
Would you agree markets see this as him being targeted?
You never know what really the truth is until it really arrives. What needs to happen is a lawyer, a judge in a court of law needs to come to a decision in due process to arrive at the conclusion of this matter. From where we sit now, we really don't know what's happening. But what is very clear is that there are factions, there are divisions, there are infighting, and that is at the price of the country, South Africa. So when these things happen, you get a currency that depreciates, you get financials, as we were talking earlier, financial index, in a market that was rallying, they had fallen, indicating angst. When you find bond yields go up, and you also find financials, particularly banks, decline in the way that we're beginning to see here, it's ominous.
And I guess it's worth remembering that for ordinary people, this has an impact. Even if you don't invest, a weaker rand means more inflation, possibly more another interest rate hike. We were hoping that we wouldn't even see one of those again.
Indeed. And we're in a country where only a few days ago we continue to even witness rioting, throwing of stones at universities. There's just seemingly a mayhem that has ensued in the country. And now we get this. It just becomes very difficult to get confidence levels that are already depressed up. So business confidence is depressed. Consumer confidence is depressed. Right now there has been positive investor confidence because there's a lust for yield globally. Emerging markets offer higher interest rates, higher yields, and investors have arrived, particularly in South African bonds, to purchase that, and we are enjoying that tailwind. In fact, without these concerns, South Africa will be fine. We're having a better Chinese outcome that helps. We're having a sub-Saharan Africa that demands SA exports, that also contributes. The European outcome is not really imploding despite Brexit. In fact, the weaker British pound is helping the economic outcome there. Also, the US, it's muddling through. It's becoming better. With that global tailwind which South Africa was enjoying, we will easily have a very different conversation with rating agencies. But with the self-inflicted crisis or pain, it becomes very difficult to defend.
Do you think this means a downgrade in December?
Sure, uncertainty needs to be taken out of this. On a balance of probabilities, there is no reason why Standard & Poor's should have an adverse credit rating that is commensurate to a junk status for South Africa, for reasons I've detailed, including the strong institutions that this country has. Admittedly, Moody's will catch up and they may downgrade. They have already began talking about state-owned enterprises. I would expect them to downgrade us. But a sub-investment grade, a junk status was going to be easily avoidable. But these type of outcomes, especially where we come from a December situation, where we're facing an abyss, and there was a problem that was very clear. Capital flight was an outcome that could have been an issue, but we averted that. Hopefully, there has been some learnings that have happened, and we don't get it to a situation where we repeat that. Because when we do, investors punish fiscal mismanagement much harder in emerging market countries than they do in developed markets.
And you could say that in some ways this is a good thing. It will go to court and be resolved. But this only relates to the small, I guess, relatively fraud charge. And that spy unit, all the ructions, all the possible future prosecution still hangs.
Leaves hanging. And therein is uncertainty that's undesired. The big test, and I think this is critical for those in authority who love this country, ought to think about this. We need to demonstrate a fiscal path that is not changing from what we've gotten accustomed to in the past 20 years. When you chop and change ministers of finance, you create uncertainty about
What if that happens again?
Well,
What
then,
if there's a cabinet reshuffle?
which includes Ministry of Finance? What happens is you've handed yourself over to an aggressive rating decision and a potential fiscal flight situation that will leave South Africa in a crisis that we've never seen since 1994.
Sure. Very ominous. And even the rand, it's not as bad as after Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene was removed. That was a 5% drop. We're at about 4% now. But I remember days afterwards, it just kept going. Do you think that could happen here?
What needs to happen is you need uncertainty to be plugged. We can't have a situation where people are anxious about where this country is going. That's why leadership is critical. Someone in authority needs to arrive and put a lid on this.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Lesiba Motata from Investment Solutions. So we take a short break and Primetime Business News continues after that.